The Fiat Mirafiori is today's brochure of the day. Welcome back. Now, if you're new to the show, Quarterlight is a car brochure channel here on YouTube, looking at lots of different car brochures from around the world, like this lovely Fiat that we're going to look at now. So let's throw this on the board and have a little bit of a look at the images, a little bit of a discussion, see if we can learn a bit more about this very interesting Italian car. So this particular brochure is actually a UK brochure dated September 82. When they did kind of like a series of these brochures, you could pick them up at the Fiat dealership, all about this size, and it's only like 4-sided sheets, so in effect it's not going to be a huge episode today, but it's worth looking at. We did have a quick look at this a couple of years ago, but I'm sure everyone who watches now probably actually missed that, and we've changed things around on Quarterlight. Let's zoom in on that main image because it is a lovely one. I always liked the Mirafiori, although when it came to buying these, everyone used to say, do not, whatever you do, buy a Fiat Mirafiori because it's going to have huge rust issues. And unfortunately in the UK, they did suffer very badly from rust, making it an extremely rare car in the UK today. I'm sure they're still running around in southern France, Italy. I'm sure there are still a few around there. But like I say, in the UK, sadly, rust was an issue. The UK and Fiat didn't really mix too well, particularly in the 70s, of course. Later on, of course, they solved most of those rust issues, of course. But yeah, fortunately, Mirafiori was plagued by that, but I always liked the design of it. Probably because I always like very boxy designs. It certainly looks more like a 70s design, a 70s car, rather than something that's been sold in 82, to be honest. 82, it's getting to the stage where we're going to go all jelly mold design cars, aerodynamics, Sierra. Think of the Sierra, how radically that changed from the Cortina. This still looks like a relatively old design, of course. I do particularly like it in this metallic blue colour with these lovely wheels, though. It looks a little bit special. There's a few different variations shown in this brochure, and we'll have a look at those. So moving into the inside of the brochure, it's really trying to sell you 3 different cars here. The Mirafiori 1400 CL, 1600 CL, and it's probably the model you wanted, the Super Mirafiori 2 litre. As well as that, there's also this super rare Mirafiori 1600 CL Estate. How rare is that? I wonder how many of them still exist in the UK, if any. I'm not sure. But like I said, we'll start up here, we'll read the text, learn a bit more about it, move on to the estates, then we'll move on to the back page where we'll look at the specifications, see what those engines are. But like I say, it's not a huge brochure, so it's not going to be a huge episode, to be honest. So we start by showing this more modestly spec'd vehicle. I think it's fair to say we've got in white. I guess it looks more poverty spec straight away, but we've got standard sort of wheels. We don't have that darkened lower section. If we move the camera along, if you don't mind, we can see that metallic blue one, just to kind of contrast that obviously is a much higher spec. The text is tiny though, but I'll read it out for you. It says the new Mirafiori range, which is made up of the 1400 CL, which is that white example that we see there, the Super Mirafiori 2000, which is the main car featured, that metallic blue. So, a great contrast between like the bottom of the range and the top of the range models. But there's also a 1600 CL as well. It says it offers you more of everything, more power, comfort and room. And then a peek on the inside. At first you think, oh, there's not much equipment in there, but once you look closely, actually the clocks are only small, but we do have a speedometer and a rev counter, little clock in the centre there, spindly little what presumably must be the indicator and wiper controls. They look like they would fall off if a feather touched them. I don't know how well they lasted, but you know, Fiat build quality wasn't probably the best at this time. But a very 80s plasticky looking interior for sure. Again, tiny writing for the description, but again, I'll read it out for you. It says, everything at the driver's fingertips. Controls for powerful and effective heating and ventilation, analog quartz clock, warning lights, and on the 1600 and 2000 models, a rev counter. To fully appreciate the performance. So I'm going to say that this is probably the 2000 Mirafiori, as that seems to be the car featured, so the high spec one. Look at the gear lever. Unusual where the markings for the gears are. Usually, of course, on top of the gear lever. Unusually placed for sure. It says standard on all Mirafioris, a 5-speed gearbox for relaxed high-speed cruising, which is nice. This sort of time, 5-speed gearboxes, people more and more wanted them, but still it's quite early on for all cars to have 5-speed gearboxes, so it's nice to say that's standard on the entire range. That's certainly a nice feature. You couldn't say that about Fords and Vauxhalls at the time. A little bit of a peek on the inside. Seats actually look very comfortable. Doesn't look the most exciting interior. It's a bit sombre, but I guess at least it's not the sea of grey that so many cars did at this time. And nice to see some head restraints on there as well. It tells us wide, comfortable seats and head restraints and front seats that recline are standard on all Mirafioris. So again, even that lowly model. The Super Miraflori 2000 has velour upholstery, pretty much what you wanted. The 1400 CL and 1600 CL have cloth, but all very nice. Velour is my favourite upholstery choice, I must admit, even more so than leather, I gotta admit, but you know, not bad interior, and like I say, all those features even on that very basic looking example that we saw earlier. And then we get the Estate. Has to be a pretty rare car now. When was the last time you saw a Mirafiori Estate? Probably in the 80s for me. It's been a long time since I've seen one of these. Text wise, it tells us what every estate car should be. The extra capacity and flexibility of a 5-door estate, with the style and creature comforts normally associated with a saloon. We get a very unusual look of the inside of the estate. Usually get sort of like an empty bed to look at and maybe a sort of piece of antique furniture when they do car brochure estates and wagons. Here they've filled the entire space up with wicker baskets, and it doesn't really give you a very good idea what the interior really looks like, but nevertheless I'm sure it did all the good estate car things. I guess we lost a little bit of space with it being a bit of a slope on the back there, but nevertheless still very handy. It tells us fold down the rear seats of the estate and you're left with a gaping 41 cubic feet of space, room enough for just about everything. And that takes us to the specification page. They've kind of like subdivided it, Mirafiori 1400 CL on this far side, and then in the centre the Mirafiori 1600 CL, the saloon and estate, and then at the far end there the Super Mirafiori 2000. So we'll start with the most basic one and then we'll move along, see what the specifications are for these interesting cars. So the 1400 CL came with an engine capacity of 1365cc, 70 bhp at 5500 rpm, 4 cylinders of course, carburetor, WebX or Solex twin choke downdraft with automatic choke. Goes on to tell us specifications: the steering, rack and pinion, turning circle 34 feet 9. Suspension is McPherson strut with coil springs front, live axle and panhard rod rear. Brakes, vacuum servo assisted, front disc rear drums, 5-speed gearbox. Major service intervals every 12,000 miles. Tells us we've got a PVC underbody protection and a fuel tank capacity of 11.7 gallons. Inside we get inertia reel front seat belts, an adjustable steering column, and it's unusual, an adjustable steering column actually for this time period. Dimensions are shown there. It tells us the boot capacity is 14 cubic feet. And as standard, we get front seat head restraints, a radio, analog quartz clock, and a cigarette lighter. Maximum speed 93 miles per hour in 4th, 90 miles per hour in 5th, 0 to 62 in 16 seconds, so it's not going to set the world ablaze. Fuel consumption figures, let's just look at the constant 56. It looks like we're getting 44.8 miles per gallon with the WebX carburetor, 43.5 with the Solex carburetor. An interesting comparison. Moving on to the next model. So the 1600s came with a 1585cc engine, 85 bhp at 5600 rpm now. Again, a 4-cylinder engine. Again, carburetor Weber or Solex twin choke downdraft with automatic choke. So we've still got a rack and pinion steering and a 34.9 feet turning circle. Suspension, McPherson strut with coil springs front, live axles and panhard rod rear. Brakes, vacuum servo assisted. Front disc, rear drums. 5-speed gearbox. Fuel tank capacity 11.7 gallons or 11 gallons for the estate. Interior, again we get inertia reel front seat belts and adjustable steering column, now added with rear wash wipe for the estate. Tells us about the dimensions again, and then it moves down to comfort, so same sort of features, so front seat head restraints, radio, analog quartz clock and a cigarette lighter. Maximum speed now is 99 miles per hour in 4th, 93 in 5th and 96 miles per hour for the auto version. 0 to 62, 15.5 seconds for the manual. Again, it's not going to exactly set the world alight, is it? Again, it's going to show the fuel consumption figures, so let's just pick out the constant 56. So the saloon is doing that with at 42.2 miles per gallon with the Weber, 40.9 miles per gallon with the Solex. The estate drops down to 35.8 and 42.2 miles per gallon. Moving on to the model you wanted, the Super Mirafiori 2000, 1995cc now, moves it up to 113 bhp at 5600 rpm. We get carburetors at a Weber twin choke downdraft with automatic choke. Looks like there's just one choice now. Actually, I don't think it was even a choice. I think you just got what you got. Steering, of course, is rack and pinion, 34.9 feet turning circle. Suspension, McPherson strut with coil springs front, live axle and panhard rod rear. Brakes, vacuum servo assisted. Front disc, rear drums, 5-speed gearbox. It looks like we've now got quartz halogen headlights as well. Fuel capacity is 11.7 gallons. On the inside we do get extra features, so we get that inertia reel front seat belt and the adjustable steering column, of course, but now we get electric front windows and central door locking. Shows the dimensions again before moving down to the comfort. So we get adjustable front seat head restraints, but also rear seat head restraints, a radio, analog quartz clock and a cigarette lighter. Performance wise, maximum speed 109 miles per hour in 4th, 106 in 5th, 0 to 62 a more reasonable 10.5 seconds. Again, it's no supercar or anything, but certainly would have felt a lot livelier than the other two. Fuel consumption at a constant 56, we're getting 38.2 mpg. So at the end here it gives us a very familiar Fiat script and the address for the UK, so Fiat Auto UK Limited, Great West Road, Brentwood, Middlesex. Text at the bottom is the usual, we can change things at any time. And the code for this particular brochure is 51M, date September 1982. So there you go, the lovely Fiat Mirafiori. Certainly a nice sight on UK roads at the time. Was anyone brave enough to buy one? Was anyone about to buy one but found out rust was an issue? Love to hear your stories, always very interesting, particularly from other countries in warmer climates, which obviously got a far different experience with their Fiat Mirafioris. But thank you so much for watching today. A little bit of a shorter episode, but I think it's sometimes nicer to do a shorter episode somewhere, particularly when we're doing these large episodes for the huge Fords and Vauxhall ranges in the 80s. But like I say, thank you so much for watching. We'll end as we always do by saying, please do consider subscribing. It's always completely free, always will be completely free is what I'm trying to say. No charge for being a subscriber, and keeps you in touch with the channel and viewing these wonderful brochures. Incidentally, we've got over 600 episodes of Quarterlight now, which is absolutely incredible, isn't it? I'll end by adding a little bit of a box here, which will be for other episodes. But thank you so much for watching today. Please do take care. We'll see you very soon. And goodbye.